Hi there. So congrats, you've made it to the last unit, which will focus on exponential and logarithmic equations. In this particular section, I want to provide you with a refresher on working with negative exponents specifically, because those will will encounter those as we work with our exponential functions moving forward in this particular unit. Um, I'll highlight this piece up here at the top. All exponential expressions are of the form y equals a to the x. A is just a numerical value raised to your variable in the exponent. The rule whenever you're working with negative exponents, I'm not sure if you recall this or not, but essentially if you have, I'm going to actually, as I talk through this, I'm going to come down here to these examples down here below. If you'll notice the first example, I have 4 to the negative 2. The rule is we don't leave items raised to a negative exponent. So what you do, we can think of this as a positive one on the bottom. The rule for getting rid of negative exponents is that if your exponent is negative in the numerator, you bring it to the denominator and make it positive. And so 4 to the negative 2 up top, I can make it positive by saying 1 over 4 squared, and then of course we know 4 squared is 16. So 4 to the negative 2 is equivalent to 1/16. And you could check that for yourself in your calculator, but this is the math behind, how 4 to the negative 2 turns into 1/16. And I'm going to be looking for exact answers, so I want you to be sure that you know how to do this as well. So now the first case is looked at a negative exponent in the numerator. What happens if you have a negative exponent in the denominator? It's very similar. If your exponent is negative in the denominator, then all that you do is bring it to the top. So essentially you swap places. If you're negative up top, you bring it to the bottom and it becomes positive. If you're negative on the bottom, you bring it up to the top and it becomes positive. So 1 over 3 to the negative 2, I bring that 3 to the negative 2 up top and it becomes 3 to the positive 2. And of course we know 3 squared is like saying 3 times 3, which is 9. Okay. The last example that we'll look at in terms of negative exponents, suppose you have a fraction that's raised to a negative exponent. Well, the rule is when you have a numerator and a denominator is that both items there are raised to that negative exponent. So here I would have 3 to the negative 2 over 4 to the negative 2. Now you notice here both of these items are raised to a negative exponent. I need to make them positive. So the only way to do that is to swap places. If you have a negative exponent up top, bring it to the bottom. Negative exponent on the bottom, bring it to the top. So my 3 squared goes down below, and my 4 squared comes up, and then I evaluate. 4 squared we know is 16, 3 squared gives us 9. Final answer, okay? So what I'd like to do is I'm going to work through this first example, 1 through 7 here with you, and then I'm going to set you free to work the remainder of this this preview and check yourself by the solution key that's provided. So here in example 1, it says it wants us to evaluate these expressions. So when I have 2 to the negative 3, okay, well I need to make this exponent positive, so that would be the equivalent to 1 over 2 to the positive 3, and then that's the same as 2 cubed. It's like saying 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8. So 1/8, final answer. The next one, 2 to the negative 2. I need to make that exponent positive, so that would be 1 over 2 squared, and then that equates to 1/4. Final answer. Look at your next one. Hopefully you're starting to see the pattern here. Well, 2 to the negative 1. I need to make that positive, so that would be 1 over 2 to the first. And 2 to the first is just 2. 1/2. Final answer. This next one I haven't addressed here in this video, but hopefully you recall this. Anything raised to the 0 power is 1. Okay, so that's just something you need to commit to memory, or you can type it in your calculator and it will always tell you any number raised to the 0 power is always 1. The next one, I have a fraction here raised to a negative exponent, so this equates to raising the top and the bottom to that negative exponent. I can't leave these negative exponents, so I've got to swap places, so that means the 4 to the first will come up top and 1 to the first will come on the bottom. 4 to the first we know is 4. 1 to the first is just 1. Anything divided by 1 is just that number. So final answer there is 4. We'll move over to the next one. Raising both of these to the negative 2 power, top and bottom. Both of these have negative exponents, so they both move. If something didn't have a negative exponent, then you wouldn't move it. I'll give you an example here in just a second. So both of these are negative, so I'm going to bring 4 squared up top, 1 squared on the bottom. We know 4 squared is 16. 1 squared on the bottom is 1. 16 divided by 1, 16. Final answer. Let's look at one more. 2/3 raised to the negative 2. So that would be 2 to the negative 2 over 3 to the negative 2. Swap places because they're negative. 2 squared comes to the bottom, 3 squared comes up top, 3 squared is 9, 2 squared is 4. Final answer, 9/4. Here's what I meant. Let's say, for example, you had a problem where you had like uh, let's do this. Let's say 2x to the -3, and I want to raise it to the -2. Then everything in here gets raised to the -2 power. So this would be 2 to the -2, and then you're raising a power to a power here, so you're multiplying. So this would be x to the +6. Well, now the only thing that needs to move is this 2 squared, because the x to the 6th is positive now. So that's what I meant a minute ago, is that only items that have a negative exponent swap places. It just so happens that in these last 3 examples here, both items had negative exponents, but if you encounter a case where that is not, then just know that you only move items that have negative exponents. So this x to the 6th is positive, so it stays, the 6 up there is positive, so it stays where it's at. Only items with negative exponents move, okay? Just an extra example here. Okay, all right, I'm going to let you work then through the rest. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks a lot. Bye.